Welcome to Question It, the podcast where we rethink health, wellness, and personal growth. I'm Kevin, your host, chief inquisitor, and sometimes guinea pig, exploring fresh paths to a better life. Let's dive into today's episode and get started. In this episode of Question It, we are once again going to take advantage of Google's Notebook LM, the AI, to repurpose a conversation that I had about a year ago with a very insightful and forward-thinking person by the name of Zen Benefiel. And in this episode, the original recording that we had was about 75 minutes long, and it's had more than 10,000 views on YouTube. And I'll put a link to that YouTube video in the show notes. But what I wanted to do in this episode of Question It is repurpose that and summarize it for you in a much shorter version using AI so that it's less than 15 minutes. In it, we talk about wellness and a slightly different approach. It's something that I talk about, and I'll be talking about more and more, where we balance wellness and well-being by nurturing our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual health. And where I like to really put attention is on our emotional health and how we nurture our relationships and strengthen our relationships on a day-to-day basis. And it just so happens that in this episode, I do talk a fair amount about the Uchi app, which I did create, and how that can be used by anyone. It's a free app that anyone can use to strengthen their relationships with the people most important to them. So without further ado, here is the AI summary of that incredibly powerful 75-minute conversation.
All right, ready to dive deep into some pretty thought-provoking stuff.
Always up for a good deep dive.
Today, we're exploring some interesting connections between personal growth, societal structures, and get this emotional health, all through the lens of one interview with Kevin Strauss.
Kevin Strauss.
Yeah, he's a biomedical engineer.
An engineer. Okay, this should be interesting.
It really is. And the interview we're looking at is from a YouTube podcast called Apocalyptic Chats podcast.
Apocalyptic Chats, huh? Sounds intense.
It is. So get ready for some twists and turns as we uncover some of the hidden insights in this material.
I'm intrigued. Let's dive in.
So what's fascinating to me is that Strauss's background in engineering, it's not just some random detail. It really shapes his whole approach to well-being.
I can see that. Sometimes the most unexpected perspectives can offer the most insightful ideas.
Exactly. Okay, so Strauss has degrees in mechanical and biomedical engineering.
Impressive.
But he actually talks more about the 18 years he spent as his father's apprentice.
Oh, interesting. Hands-on experience.
Exactly. He says that's where he really honed his creative problem-solving skills, something that he says was sometimes missing from his, formal education.
I think a lot of us can relate to that disconnect. Sometimes there's this gap between what we learn in theory and how things actually work in the real world.
Absolutely. It can be in education, work, even personal life. Those systems that don't quite value thinking outside the box.
Right, totally.
And Strauss illustrates this with a story about watching a spinal surgery.
A spinal surgery?
Yeah, and it's wild. Something as simple as cutting a metal rod became a huge issue because the tool they were using kept jamming.
Oh, wow.
So the surgeon's getting frustrated, the patient's under anesthesia for longer than needed, and the whole thing just adds up to more stress and costs than necessary.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Makes you realize that even in such a precise field, you always need to be ready to problem solve creatively.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, where have you seen this kind of disconnect in your own life? Those times when a system or a process felt way too complicated and you thought, there's got to be a better way to do this.
It's definitely happened. I've encountered situations where, things just didn't seem logical or efficient, and I've definitely questioned the status quo. Now, Strauss also tells this funny story about refusing to eat ice cream as a child.
Yeah. That one. It sounds kind of funny, but it actually shows a lot about his resistance to just going along with what everyone expects.
It's like a little rebellion against conformity. And it ties into a bigger theme here, the concept of emotional health.
Okay, so how does he define that?
He says it's our ability to give and receive love and connection. And that's just as much a basic human need as anything else.
Wow. It's true, but we don't always think of it that way.
Right. He lists out 6 basic human needs: air, water, food, sleep, safety, and shelter.
The basics.
And then right alongside those, he adds love and connection.
Interesting. So he's elevating love and connection to that essential level.
Exactly. And he makes a strong case for it. He actually goes on to link this need for love and connection to broader societal issues. He suggests that the lack of it contributes to a lot of the problems we see, especially for marginalized groups who face systemic bias.
It's a powerful connection to make. Going back to that ice cream story, Strauss mentions he felt like his parents didn't really acknowledge or validate his feelings when he said he didn't want it.
Right, and that points to a super important distinction. Acknowledging versus validating feelings. Acknowledging is just recognizing how someone feels. But validating goes a step further. It's about conveying understanding and empathy, really making someone feel heard.
So to bring this back to the listeners, how often do you feel genuinely heard, not just acknowledged? What impact does that have on your relationships, your well-being?
Something to think about for sure. Now get this. Strauss has a really different take on the whole self-love thing.
Yeah, I was surprised by that too.
He challenges the whole idea that you have to love yourself before you can love others.
He basically flips the script. He suggests we learn to love by first experiencing love from others, especially our parents.
He actually brings up a story about his boss at Amron, who believed in his abilities before he did. That external validation really helped him.
Wow. It goes against a lot of what we hear these days.
It does. And speaking of challenging assumptions, Strauss also brings up this concept of little traumas.
Little trauma.
Yeah, things like shame, judgment, degradation, emotional neglect. Those everyday hurts that are often overlooked.
But they can have a big impact.
Absolutely. Strauss even talks about his own experience growing up in a really critical environment, always feeling judged.
And that feeling of not being good enough, it stayed with him. It really shows how those subtle traumas can get ingrained in families, schools, workplaces.
It's sobering, isn't it? And it brings up an important question for all of us. Have you experienced these kinds of subtle traumas in your own life?
And if so, how have they affected you, your emotional well-being, your ability to connect with others?
It's definitely something to reflect on. Now, one of the things I find most interesting about Strauss is how he tackles these challenges head-on. He wants to create healthier, more supportive environments. And that's where his creation, the Uchi app, comes in.
Okay, so tell me about this Uchi app. What is it?
Well, he describes it as a platform based on questions and answers. It's designed to foster those deeper connections. But get this, it's all within a closed group of trusted friends, your inner circle.
So he's going against this idea that meaningful interactions can only happen face-to-face.
Exactly. He actually compares it to old school letter writing, where people really took the time to connect through words.
It's all about vulnerability, taking turns, and really thinking about what you want to say.
Yeah, it's about creating a space where you can share openly and honestly without fear of judgment, knowing that the people in your circle are listening, truly trying to understand you.
So not just firing off quick texts or posting on social media.
Nope. It's about slowing down and being intentional with your words. Uchi relies solely on the written word. No pictures, videos, nothing like that.
That's really interesting. Why only writing?
Strauss emphasizes the power of writing. He believes that it forces you to be more mindful, more articulate, to really think about what you want to express.
It makes you wonder if we've lost something by relying so much on visuals and audio.
Right. Have we forgotten how to express ourselves effectively through writing? Strauss argues that it's a vital skill for building real connections, and it's a skill we might be losing.
This is all tying together so well. And it comes back to his engineering background. He sees language as a tool, like any other tool.
It's about choosing the right words in the right way to achieve something. And in this case, it's deeper, more authentic connection.
This is such a unique perspective, and it goes beyond just personal relationships, right?
Absolutely. He believes this kind of listening is crucial in every part of our lives. Families, friendships, work, communities. Imagine how much conflict and misunderstanding we could avoid if we all approached conversations with the goal of understanding the other person's perspective.
Wow, it's a really powerful idea.
It is, and at the end of the day, that's Strauss's call to action. Connect with people by really listening to understand them, to foster that sense of acknowledgement and validation.
He believes that simple act of listening deeply can make a huge difference in our emotional health, our relationships, even society as a whole.
It's about recognizing everyone's inherent worth and creating a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and understood.
It's a beautiful vision, and it comes from a biomedical engineer trying to solve a problem, the lack of love and connection in our world. And his solution, the written word, who would have thought?
It just goes to show that sometimes the most powerful solutions come from the most unexpected places. Now let's talk about the potential impact of this Uchi app. What sets it apart? How does it actually put these powerful ideas into practice? It really is about being intentional. It's not about getting a bunch of likes or instant gratification. Strauss created Uchi for those times when you really want to have a deep, meaningful conversation with someone you trust.
Like a modern-day letter writing thing.
You got it.
Yeah.
And that's where the power of actually writing things down comes in. It slows you down. You have to really think about what you want to say. And you can express yourself with a lot more depth than you would in a text or on a call.
It makes sense. Especially these days, everything is so fast-paced. We're always skimming the surface, responding quickly without really thinking things through.
Exactly. That's the problem Strauss wants to address. Uchi isn't about speed. It's about creating a space for real, heartfelt communication.
So how does it work? What's it like to use the app?
Well, it's pretty simple. You start by making a closed group with just a few people you trust, your inner circle, as he calls it. And then within that group, you ask each other questions and give your answers in writing.
It's interesting that it's all about questions. Did he talk about why he chose that format?
He did. He believes that asking the right questions can really help you understand yourself better. They make you think and give thoughtful answers.
I see how that fits in with everything else. The writing, the intentional communication, the focus on questions. It's all about creating a deeper connection.
Okay, so I need to jump in here for just a second because the AI actually is misinterpreting how Uchi is really used. So on the Uchi app, users do not ask questions back and forth. There are plenty of other apps out there like Quora and things that you can ask questions back and forth. But what Uchi does is the free version provides a whole database of questions that you can answer in any order, go to any topic and skip around, and only your Uchi friends can read your answers and comment. And they can only read your answer if they've already answered that question. Of course, you can ask follow-up questions in the comments, again, just to each other, but it's not a platform where you just post questions and people answer or even your network answers. Okay, that's the free version of Uchi. Then, on the fee-based side of Uchi, an Uchi user can be an uchiTribe leader. They pay a small fee, and they can come up with questions of their own and invite a handful up to 10 people into that uchiTribe. And then each person in the uchiTribe, including the leader, can answer the questions that the leader creates. There's more details if you go to the uchiconnection.com website. And of course, reach out to me if you have any other questions about Uchi. Also, you can find more videos and things about Uchi through its social media platform, which is always at uchiconnection. So TikTok videos, YouTube videos are at uchiconnection. Okay, back to the AI summary.
But how does it address those little T traumas we were talking about?
Oh, that's a good question. Remember how Strauss said he grew up feeling judged and criticized? Well, he wanted to create a space where people could share their thoughts and feelings without feeling that judgment.
So Uchi is like a no-judgment zone.
Pretty much, yeah. The goal is to create an environment where people feel accepted and understood, especially by their trusted friends in that closed group.
I can see how that would be huge for someone who's used to holding back or pretending everything's okay. It's like a safe haven where you can just be yourself.
Exactly. And that feeling of safety is really important for dealing with those emotional wounds caused by the little T traumas.
This is all making a lot of sense now. The writing, the questions, the safe space. It's a really powerful combination for personal growth and healing. But the big question is, does it really work? Does using Uchi actually make a difference in people's lives?
Well, it's still pretty new. It's not about quick fixes or overnight transformations. It's about putting in the work to build those deeper connections. That takes time and effort, and you have to be willing to let your guard down.
So it's not like some magic cure.
No, but it could be a great way to start making real changes.
This has been really fascinating so far. We've talked about Kevin Strauss's unique background, his perspective on emotional health, and his solution, the Uchi app. What are some of your main takeaways from all of this? What really stood out to you? You know what really struck me? It was how much he talked about the power of just being heard. Like really heard. I think we all want that, but these days it seems harder and harder to find.
It's true. We're constantly connected, but often in these very shallow zays.
Right. So many messages and notifications, but do we really feel like someone is truly listening, getting what we're saying, and feeling?
And that's what's so powerful about Uchi. It's not just another platform for showing off. It's about creating that safe space where you can really have a heart-to-heart.
People are definitely tired of all the fake stuff online. They want real connection, something that goes beyond those surface-level interactions.
It's like we've forgotten how to just talk to each other. Really listen, have those meaningful conversations. Strauss reminds us how important those connections are. Those are the ones that make us feel truly seen.
And he's not just talking about personal relationships. He thinks this kind of listening is so important for building a better world, a more understanding world. It makes you wonder, what would happen if we all tried to listen that way with the goal of actually understanding, not just waiting for our turn to talk?
It's a good question. It goes back to his engineering background. Thinking about communication as a problem that needs a solution. And his solution is Uchi.
Uchi is a really interesting tool, but even without the app, I think the takeaway here is that we can all get better at listening. It doesn't require technology. It's a skill we can practice every day.
Definitely. It's a choice we make, a decision to be present, to put aside our own stuff, and really focus on what the other person is saying. It's about listening with your whole self, not just your ears.
So as we wrap things up here, I have a little challenge for everyone listening. Think about how you can bring more of this deep listening into your own life. What small changes can you make to be more present, more attentive when you're talking to someone?
Yeah, maybe it's putting your phone down, really looking at the person you're talking to, asking questions to make sure you understand. It could be making time for those deeper conversations with people you care about without any distractions. Or maybe even having conversations with people who see the world differently than you do.
Exactly. The important thing is to be deliberate about it, to really listen with the goal of understanding. Who knows, those little acts of listening might just make the world a little bit kinder, a little bit more connected, one conversation at a time.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Kevin Strauss, the Uchi app, and the power of deep listening. We hope it's given you something to think about and that you'll keep exploring these ideas.
Keep diving deep, keep asking questions, keep connecting, and most importantly, keep the conversation going.
Okay, so what did you think of that AI summary of a 75-minute long conversation that I had with Zen Benefiel over a year ago? It's pretty interesting, I think, how it really dives deep into the importance of emotional health and human connection and our relationships. And then it also gives a fair amount of attention to the Uchi app and how you can use it. So like every episode of the Question It podcast, I'd like to invite you to dig in deeper with me and some of the other audience, other listeners of this episode, and join a free uchiTribe using the free Uchi app to dig deeper with questions that I'm going to come up with and offer with a few examples in the show notes. So I hope you'll click the link down below and join this conversation, and let's dig in deeper to our overall health and well-being. Until next time, peace, love, and connect. Thanks for joining me on Question It. Remember, growth happens outside your comfort zone, so keep experimenting and embracing change. If you enjoyed this episode, connect with me in the show notes, leave a 5-star review, and request to join this episode's uchiTribe. Until next time, peace, love, and connect.